Is it the color of their skin, or is it the tax bracket that they're in? Is it the immigrant soul, or is it the domestic policy at home? Is it the radicalized men, or is it the nation that colonized them? That was an excerpt from the new Grandson album titled Inertia, which Grandson actually, as an artist, was recommended to me by a viewer. So hey, thank you guys so much for that recommendation. Definitely keep them coming. This whole section of the wall is reserved just for viewer recommendations, which I need to get on that soon. One of these days. Been saying that for months. So if you guys have some protest music that is missing from the wall behind me, definitely leave a comment below, like and subscribe if you like the vibe, check out the Patreon account if you want to support the channel further, and as always check out our other reviews of protest albums, the occasional protest, and other random nonsense. Anyways, getting into this Grandson album, very good album. This is definitely a political album through and through. I will give it a rather high score at the end, but the real question is, will this album overtake what I previously have said is the best protest album of 2025, that album being Death of the Heart by Jer, not to be confused with Jer, like I was incorrectly saying earlier on the previous video. But as it stands now, Jer's Death of the Heart is my #1 album of 2025 in terms of protest music. So now, again, not to necessarily compare the two right off the bat, but this album will definitely be close in terms of its contribution to the culture of resistance. How much corruption does it highlight? What social or political or economic topics does it hit on? We will find out as we dive in. So let's go ahead and dive in. Starting off with track 1, titled Bury You, which is a track spotlighting an abuser, someone who lies, someone who gaslights, rehearses every word, much like I have to do time and time again because I can't just say half this shit in one take without fumbling my words or just losing my train of thought. But it also touches on how people act or how they react when they get a taste of power. As the song says, power didn't change you, it made you more of what you are. Power, it reveals the real you when you take it too far. This whole song totally reminds me of people like J.D. Vance, people that started from humble beginnings and actually had a good moral compass, but then they threw away that compass in order to secure a seat at the table of power, which, you know, seems to be working out for him pretty well so far. Maybe I should dispose of my morals. What do you think? And again, similar sentiment to Jer's Death of the Heart, the whole concept of moral apathy eventually eroding us into moral monsters, because again, we just put up with so much shit, so much vile vitriol, so many synonyms for what I am saying. Anyways, track 2, Autonomous Delivery Robot. This is an excellent track, kicks mini ass, probably my #1 recommended song from the album, right here, track 2. Do you ever get irrationally angry when you see one of those autonomous delivery robots, or one of those self-driving cars from San Francisco, or one of those Boston Dynamic videos? Grandson sure does. Because for as cool as it is, you understand what this nascent technology will eventually become, what it will eventually be used for. Warfare, policing, surveillance. In other words, doing way more than just cooking hot dogs or delivering your Labubus. Anything can and will be used against you in the court of prevailing warfare. And of course, while all of this technology is developing, the internet is slowly becoming censored. There is no such thing as privacy anymore. They can track your digital footprint or even your physical footprint for that matter. And with the rise of technocratic authoritarianism, given everything we just discussed, when the time comes, will you be able to outrun that robot? Will you be able to outsmart that robot? Will you be able to outgun that robot? Crazy awesome track. Highly recommend. Now, to put your mind at ease, Peter Zion did make a really good point on this, where yes, autonomous warfare, drone warfare is a scary prospect for our future, but given the current circumstances regarding servers and the chips that are required to run such vehicles, including just the supply chains necessary to make the chips that are not just any old chips, they are actually the most advanced chips. Really, the infrastructure infrastructure isn't there for this to be a genuine concern, at least not for like the next 20 or 30 years, unless there's some kind of crazy technological breakthrough. So doing something like that on a mass scale really is not super likely. Maybe we shouldn't be that concerned about AI drone warfare. Or should we? Track 3, Brain Rot, is another excellent song about losing our humanity in the digital age where everything you can find on the internet is just corrupting our brains, swipe by swipe, click by click. You're watching war footage, advertisements, the cops taking out someone innocent, celebrity gossip. We're just tripping on dopamine while simultaneously distracting ourselves from our own life by watching all of these tragedies unfold on our screen on a device that was brought to us by child labor and exploitation. So brain rot is a real condition. Avoid it at all costs. Track 3, Self-Immolation, is actually a reference to Aaron Bushnell, a United States airman who set himself on fire outside of the Israeli embassy in an extreme act of protest against the atrocities that Israel was committing in Gaza. And we actually mentioned Aaron in our review of Low-Key's soundtrack to The Struggle 3 on the track Genocide Joe. And now, as it turns out, maybe it was restricted Genocide Joe, considering that then we were not talking about bulldozing all of Gaza to make room for vacation spots and hotels paid for by the natural gas located there. But you know, not saying that he didn't have a hand in it, but I'm just saying that there were a lot of restrictions put on Israel. Track 5, You Made Me This Way, is a pretty interesting take on abortion and a woman's right to choose. Because if babies are born to parents who are not ready, who are not financially stable, who may not stay together long term, what is the outcome for that child? Will they grow up underprivileged, undernurtured, or under neglectful step-parents? Because when the bills are high and the family is struggling, who will be there to teach the child? Who will be there to raise the child? The internet. Now, of course, this is a really big topic. I don't mean to imply that unplanned pregnancy or divorce or just changes to the home life cannot lead to the betterment for the lives of those parties involved. I'm just saying, as the song goes, I was born in a country that only thought I mattered as a embryonic sack of cells. Because once the baby's born, who cares? Who cares about their education, their resources, their health care? Because these things cost money and nobody wants to pay for them. But at the same time, we want to shutter any access to contraceptives or taking away a woman's right to choose what she does with her own body. And looking at the legislation in multiple states that don't have any exceptions for abuse or incest. And yet, once that child is born, society continuously shows that we don't want to care for them after that point. So that's really what this song is about. It's really about the forgotten kids, the underprivileged kids, the kids that were sort of forced to grow up in a home that wasn't ready for them in the first place for whatever reason, which is really highlighted with this line here: put a fetus on the throne like he's Jesus, then when he meets us, I guess he's on his own. Or the line from Immortal Technique, calling abortion murder in a medical building, but don't give a fuck about bombing Iraqi children, which that line could be updated for Gazan children. And the last thing that I'll say about this song, again titled You Made Me This Way, it reminds me of that African proverb that goes, a child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. I feel like that encompasses this entire song in essence. Anyway, solid song. Going on to the next song, Little White Lies. White lies that are reiterated, regurgitated a million times. But it's more than just the white lie, meaning like small and harmless, but again, because it's repeated, it's a little more sinister than that, it's a little more systemic than that, but also I think it's getting at the little white lies, the lies told by the whites, says me, the bald bearded white guy. So what are these white lies that we're talking about? They're lies like the brown socialist named Jesus, and yet he's always depicted as being white, or a nation pretending to not exist on stolen land, or that all political parties and politicians are corrupt except for mine. But it also goes on to say that there's the Eurocentric vision that is spreading across the world, there is the nationalistic vision that is spreading across the world, and then you get the fascism spreading across the world. But the song really breaks out into an anthem on the tail end saying, fuck that, we will not bow down to authority. We will not let these white lies perpetuate further. We will self-correct, which in a lot of cases is actually just reflecting on the sins of the past, understanding them so that we can better understand ourselves in the current climate. We are more educated, we are more well-rounded, and we are more understanding, which that's really all it comes down to, is just being more understanding of ourselves, of our past, of other people. And the next track, God is an Animal, is about not being placated to the ideologies that benefit the powerful, religious, or otherwise. They start with the children, they silence dissent, they give you these pills, and they say that if you don't act right, then you will burn in the next life. So it's sort of a mental conquering, intentionally designed to keep you intellectually weak. But much like the Black Hawk that soars in the sky, we will rise, we will take flight, and we will achieve our freedom. The track Bells of War is more or less about us ringing the war bells of resistance, how you just need one person to stand up, one person to raise their voice, one person to stand in front of a tank, and that one act of resistance might be the spark for others to follow. It might inspire others to stand up, to raise their voice, to stand in front of that tank also. It's a great anthem, a great message, and all it takes to make my day is a simple like and subscribe, and maybe a comment down below, if you guys wanted to, guys. Moving on to the next song, Who Is Your Enemy, which is where the excerpt from the opening of this video came from. So is it the people that you're always hitting down on, or is it the people that you should be hitting up on? And of course, I'm not advocating for violence. What I'm saying is we're always hitting down, right? We're always hitting at marginalized people, people that are minorities, or people that don't have a whole lot of political power. The same people that are often dehumanized versus the people that are profiting off of that same division, that same dehumanization. Those are the people we need to be focused on in terms of criticism, in terms of dissecting their lies, in terms of dismantling their propaganda machines, not with violence, but with action, with confrontation, with debate. You dig? And like the song says, are your enemies really trans people? Are they really the boycotts of some of these more corrupt businesses? Is it really someone throwing rocks, or in some case, a sandwich? Or is it the system that criminalizes people, sometimes for just existing, or in some cases, turning their homes to rubble? And at the end of the song, we actually have a feature from Bob Villain, or Violin. I don't know, man. I'm so shook after the whole Jer fiasco. I don't know how to pronounce anything anymore. Thumbling my worth. And they make some solid points about colonization, how immigrants arrive on America's shores, fleeing a country that was already either exploited for resources or destabilized or had their governments overthrown by the United States, just to arrive on American shores and be demonized by the same country that was built on slave labor. You see what I'm saying? Shit's crazy, man. You really cannot understand the present moment unless you go back in history. And of course, I myself am not an expert. I'm not trying to throw out the whole Dave Smith spiel, but I do try to follow the experts. I do try to maintain a good, well-rounded, solid source base. And I'm pretty open about that. I have a whole bunch of videos talking about my sources, the books I read, the people I listen to. It's not like I'm hiding this shit. There's also an entire fucking wall! Anyways, so now we arrive at the final song, Pull the Trigger. This one deals with being a product of your environment, how some individuals might go off the deep end if they don't have access to resources, if they don't have a support network, or if they just don't have any kind of outlet in general for their anger. Deja Sade had a great video talking about the M&M-sized hole in white America, again talking about how Slim Shady as a persona actually gave an outlet to white suburban kids who were angry, who grew up poor, and found an outlet for that anger in Slim Shady in that crazy off-the-wall, crude humor, I don't give a fuck persona. Very interesting perspective. I'll link it down below, and if I don't, please yell at me. But again, if that individual doesn't have the proper resources, coping mechanism, or outlet for their anger, then they might just resort to violence. And Grandson himself even says that he's glad he picked up the pen instead of a weapon. He also had a really good line saying that my skin is white, so you would say I need a therapist, but if I was brown, then you would label me a terrorist. Very similar sentiment to Low Key soundtrack to the Struggle 1, 2, and 3. And he also says in the chorus that we love it when things get violent. And I heard Tom Bailu talk about this when talking about political violence, which I thought was actually pretty insightful. That anger itself is such a strong emotion. It's an upper, it's very stimulating, but there's also a clarity to it. It kind of cuts out the noise, it cuts out the nonsense, and there's just black and white, or in some cases, red. So there's no nuance, you're just pissed off, and that's all there is. And again, that provides a sort of mental clarity. And we know that hate sells. It's the most contagious. It generates the most headlines, and therefore it generates the most revenue, unfortunately. So again, I think it's incumbent upon us to actually focus on the real issues, coming together as a country, having good discourse with people that you disagree with, meeting face to face in person, not just online. Because even me right now, this is such a weird parasocial engagement where even if you watched every single video I have on this channel, you still really want to know me. You still really want to know all of my beliefs, because even these videos, no matter how much I research these topics or think about what I want to say, it's never actually the full story. It's still just a snapshot, though it is much more than just, say, a Facebook comment. Anyways, my thought process got completely derailed. We were talking about coming together as a country, no longer dividing ourselves into these groups, the in-group, the out-group, examining how power structures actually divide us and keep us divided, focusing on the economic turmoil that leaves people in this fight or flight mode, which makes people sensitive, it makes them angry, it makes them want to lash out, because those lack of resources and support will leave people clamoring for anything that might provide an outlet for their anger and despair, and that's when the algorithm takes advantage of them. And that's how I end this review. So that's the review of Grandson's new album, Inertia. Again, a wonderful front to back, no skips, no nothing, but good solid political and social commentary hitting on many topics. I would say that my #1 recommended song from this album, if you only heard one, would be Autonomous Delivery Robot. I just love the creativity within that track. I love the angle, even though, yeah, like I said, Peter Zion and other people might say that it's not the most prevalent concern that we should have given the supply chain issues and the chips and the server connections, all that jazz. But still, I just think that song is so good, and I still really like the angle taken. Now, as for a score, again, guys, I'm working on it. It seems like every time I do one of these reviews, I'm kind of tweaking previous reviews. But basically, all the ones that I've done already, you can just drop a notch, except for Jer, because I still think Death of the Heart is a 95% out of 100. But albums like Chevelle and Rise Against, those can probably get dropped down to like B's or something. But this album, Inertia, it is a little bit on the shorter side, but it still packs a kick. It still has a lot of heat. It still has a lot to say, and it says it very well, I think. So overall, I'm going to give this one a 93%. It's still very good. It's still an A. Highly recommend. This is actually the second highest scoring album that we've done for the year 2025. Again, just barely beaten by Death of the Heart. But my reasoning for not scoring this higher is that I think Death of the Heart encompasses a bit more wider scope, but it also gives a lot more guidance on how to process, how to cope, how to move forward in these dark and troubling times. But Grandson still put out a great album. I highly recommend it. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. If you have heard this album, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Let me know if there's any other albums that I should add to the wall, any other albums that pertain to the culture of resistance. Like and subscribe if you like the vibe. Check out the Patreon account if you guys want to support the channel. There's not a whole lot on the Patreon, admittedly, but I mean, you can still help out, I suppose, if you wanted to, but not necessary. Anyways, as always, guys, stay well, stay safe, stay informed, and we will see you on the next video. Later.